Welcome to Mind Bending Monday. Thank you so much for joining us today. Did you know that there is an organizer that helps 8th graders construct and interpret two-way frequency tables and at the same time can provide enrichment for a 3rd grader who is also practicing using a letter to represent an unknown amount in an equation? Yes, it's a Venn diagram, but today, instead of visual puzzles, we're going to explore how to use Venn diagrams to support algebra. But if you teach elementary school, don't quit watching because you'll see how you can easily use this as a logic puzzle with your students, while 8th grade students and 6th and 7th grade students use it to cover their curriculum. It's exciting. Are you ready? Let's get started. Perplexing logic puzzles using Venn diagrams. Episode 1, 2-circle Venn diagrams. These puzzles are amazing. They're challenging, they're fun, they help improve critical thinking skills, and they build a stronger conceptual understanding of many different mathematical concepts. Today, we're beginning with 2-circle Venn diagrams, but we will get to 3 circles in upcoming episodes. Here are just a few of the objectives that are involved in solving these puzzles in different grade levels. I personally have used these in elementary school, and they are fantastic for problem solving and building perseverance and representing problems using letters for unknown quantities, or as we call them, variables. And I've also used these problems in middle school. I think you will see how valuable these can be in middle school, both this week with 2 circles and in following episodes with 3 circles. Today we're going to begin the puzzle using variables. If you have not used Venn diagrams with variables, please go back and watch our video, Introduction to Venn Diagrams, for ideas on introducing the use of variables with Venn diagrams. In this video, using variables begins at the time 6:45, so if you want to fast forward to that, but if you haven't seen the video, please go back and watch it and then come and join us. Are you ready? Let's get started. Saturday morning. So as you read this problem, what you'll see is that a group of people were asked how they had spent their time between 9 and 11 a.m. one Saturday morning. And they were given 2 choices. They were asked if they spent time outside or if they spent time with friends. And then it gives some information from the survey. Now, what common misconceptions do students often have? And what do you see students do? I've done this a long time, and what I see most often is students take all of these numbers, 48, 20, 31, 22, and add them together. And that is their answer for how many people are surveyed. So what questions can we ask to help students recognize and correct their own misconceptions instead of just telling them? So once again, I'm going to refer back to the video Introduction to Venn Diagrams because there are some ways that you can question by using physical objects. In that video, there are visuals, and so students have to place them based on attributes, and they can easily see they have more than one attribute. You definitely want to give students time to struggle with this and think about how it might be solved. But if it becomes unproductive and they have really come to a place where they cannot figure it out, instead of telling them and instead of using the visual Venn diagrams, you could also set up something really quickly in your classroom with people. Here's an example. You can act it out. Just ask your students 2 questions about themselves and allow them to answer the questions and participate. So here's just one example. How many students are wearing jeans? Have them stand up, count them, write your total. And then how many students are wearing glasses? Have them stand up, count them, and write your total. And then ask, okay, so if I add these two numbers together, is that how many people are in the class? And they'll quickly recognize no. But you want to ask them, okay, how can I sort this information so that it does include everyone in the class? And then when they get to a Venn diagram, then you'll start to say, oh, okay, I have some people who are both. I have some people who wear jeans but don't have on glasses. And I have some people who are wearing glasses but are not wearing jeans. And then I have some people who are not wearing either. And you want to make sure that you include a box for the universal set, because no matter what age, they may not be doing that yet, but that is an important concept. Now, you can choose any two categories. The important thing is that you're purposeful in your choice. You want to have some students who are in both and some students who are in neither. And once you give them those choices and they start to develop that understanding, then go back and have them look at the problem. So give the students time to use a Venn diagram to solve this problem. But then let's talk about how we could solve it together. So hopefully students have already come to the conclusion that we need to label with variables all of our sections. So we'll do that, A, B, C, D. And then we're going to look at each of the clues and interpret them as equations. So the first clue, and I like to use color. I think that helps for students to see the clue that is associated with each equation. 48 people spent time outside. Well, a lot of students will just want to write the number 48 here. And if they do that, you can question them. Okay, those students spent time outside. Did anyone else spend time outside? And if you need to, go back to your example with people in the class. So yes, the students who are in this section also spent time outside because it's everyone in this circle. So they can write A plus B, and you can ask, what equation can I write to show that the people in this section and the people in this section all spent time outside, and that's 48 people. So you'll want to question them and let them come up with that. Okay, let's look at the next clue. 20 people had not spent time with friends. So what is the main misconception or misunderstanding they may have? They'll just include A. So go back to some examples you have, go back to a visual example, and talk about what does it mean that they had not spent time with friends. So ask them, where are the people who did spend time with friends? Well, if those people are inside this circle, then it would be anyone who's outside, which would include A, but it would also include D. So I can write A plus D equals 20. I'm going to give myself some space above because eventually I'll go back and write some numbers and determine those values. Okay, let's look at the next one. 31 people had spent time outside and spent time with friends. So finally, I have something that I know for a category. That is B, and B equals 31. So I can write B here, 31 here and here. Now, what else do I know if that's true? And I don't tell them, let them figure it out, but someone will go back and say, oh, then you know A. And if they don't, then you can keep going. So we'll keep going just to see what would happen if they don't come up with that. 22 people had spent time doing only one of those activities. That's a little more challenging and may require for some students a little more time, but the sections that are in one and only one circle are A and C. So A plus C is 22. Now, if students have not gone back and put in B, at this point, just stop and let them figure it out. But someone will, and they'll say, okay, now I know that B is 31. So now I can determine the value of A. So I know that A equals 17. If A is equal to 17, then I can substitute those values in both of those equations. So that lets me know that D is equal to 3 and C is equal to 5. So now I've completed my Venn diagram. You can check your work by just looking at this. 48 people spent time outside. Well, there are 48 people inside this circle. 20 people had not spent time with friends. Well, 17 plus 3 is 20. 31 people had spent time doing both, and 22 people had only done one of the activities. So now you've got your Venn diagram. You just have to look at your questions. I erased my work to give myself some space, but how would you determine the number of people who were surveyed? And if you need to, go back and do a visual Venn diagram and look at the number of pieces in the puzzle, or go back to your class example and look at the number of people in the class. And hopefully students will begin to see you just add all of the sections because everyone is represented somewhere. So you can say, okay, well, 17 plus 3 plus 31 plus 5 equals 56. So I know 56 people were surveyed. How many people did not spend time outside or with friends? So if we understand this diagram, we know that that's 3. 3 people did not spend either. If you teach elementary school, that is where you'll stop. Your students have written equations with letters to represent unknown amounts. They've persevered through problem solving. They've used different tools and models to help them solve the problem, and that is fantastic. You can obviously ask different questions, but the next section will be for our middle school teachers. If you teach 8th grade, you know that your students are constructing and interpreting two-way tables to summarize and analyze bivariate categorical data. That can be pretty challenging for 8th graders, and some of them get pretty confused, but the Venn diagram really helps them to see this clearly. Let's look at how we can relate the Venn diagram to the table. The first question that I always ask 8th graders is, where in this table are these categories represented, if at all? And I have them write the variable in the section so that they can start to relate that information. So for example, and if they need another question, okay, well, this circle represents people who spent time outside. Where is that on this table? Well, it's did spend time outside is this column. So you know A and B are somewhere here, and just have them think about it, work with a team, and label the sections with variables because they'll see, okay, did spend time with both this, they spent time outside, but they also spent time with friends. So that's B. And this section is people who spent time outside and did not spend time with friends. So that's A. So I can go ahead and say this is 31 and this is 17. And what about did not spend time outside? So they're not in this circle, but they did spend time with friends. where would that be? So hopefully they will see, okay, well, that's C. And did not do either. They weren't outside. They didn't spend time with friends. That's D. So when you do that, students start to realize that all of your data from your Venn diagram is in this section. And then they start to understand that this is really providing the total and what it actually tells you. So if you find the total here, you can see, okay, well, that's 48. And in my clues, I remember that 48 people spent time outside. Did not spend time outside. We didn't have a clue for that. But they can see that's 8, and so 56. And they can see that that should be 56 because both of these totals are related to time outside. This should also be 56 because it's the same people, but these two totals are related to time with friends. So 36 people did spend time with friends, and 20 people did not. Now that your two-way table is complete, let's look at some questions you might want to ask and some other questions that would be appropriate for different grade levels in middle school. If you teach 8th grade, you're probably going to want to ask them to complete a relative frequency table, which is fairly simple if they have all the data. But for many grade levels, we can talk about percents, we could talk about fractions, we can ask all kinds of questions that they can use either the Venn diagram or the table. So if they're in 6th or 7th grade, they can just use their Venn diagram to answer these questions. So notice the different types of questions. One is what percent of people surveyed did not spend time outside. So they're finding the percent of the whole. But in the next question, it's the percent of a part. What percent of those who spent time outside also spent time with friends? So you want them to start to understand how to work with those numbers. And then you could do something where they apply it to a larger group. So if this random sample was representative of the community and there were this many people in the community, how many people would you expect to have done this? You can ask some different questions. When you go to download the Google Slides, I also have just the percentage questions on one page. And don't forget probability. So here are some questions that you can ask about probability, and students use the data from their Venn diagram to answer probability questions. So these two questions are just based on one winner chosen randomly. But then these questions ask, okay, what if they wanted to give 2 prizes to 2 different people? So you can adjust those as needed for your students. But I hope these ideas are helpful. When you give this problem, the questions that you ask and your expectations will change based on the age of the student and their mathematical knowledge. But all students will really love these puzzles, and they build thinking skills for everyone. So I hope it's helpful, and I hope you'll use it. Thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate your time, and we value your opinion. Every month we give away a free prize. This month, the prize involves Venn diagram puzzles, so we hope that you will enter. All you have to do is tell us what you think. So use one of these as a way to enter, and you can enter more than once. You can enter on each of these ways every week. So we hope to hear from you, and don't forget, be sure to hit like and subscribe. We don't want you to miss a single episode of Mind Bending Monday. Thanks again so much for your time. Have a great week, and we'll see you next Monday.